When a key player leaves a team, it's always a big story. But every once in a while, a single player's departure isn't just a roster move, it's a massive red flag. It's a sign that something much, much bigger is going on under the surface. So let's dive into why the Indianapolis Colts letting one specific player walk out the door might just be signaling a huge seismic shift for the entire franchise. And here it is. This is the headline that really got the ball rolling. Kwity Paye, a first-round pick and a consistent starter for 5 straight years, is gone. He's packed his bags and is leaving Indianapolis behind. And his exit is forcing the Colts, and all of us, to ask some seriously uncomfortable questions about what in the world is going on with this team's direction. So why did he leave? What was the final straw? Well, the answer is right there on your screen, plain and simple. $48 million. The Las Vegas Raiders came in with a massive 3-year offer that was basically a giant blinking sign of how much they valued him. But it was also a huge statement from the Colts, who looked at that number for a guy they drafted and developed, and they just said, nope, we'll pass. So here's how we're going to break this whole thing down. First, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of Paye's exit and figure out what the Colts really lost on the field. Then we'll look at who might replace him. After that, we're going to zoom way, way out and start connecting the dots. We'll explore a potential identity crisis, we'll question the leadership, and we'll wrap it all up by asking what this all means for the future of the Colts franchise. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, a starter's shocking exit. We need to dig into the hard facts of who Kwity Paye was for this team and really understand the massive contract that pulled him away from Indy and sent him to Las Vegas. Let's be crystal clear about something. Kwity Paye wasn't just some guy on the roster. He was the 21st overall pick in the draft. That's a huge investment of draft capital that the team spent years trying to develop. We're talking about a player who started 74 games for them. He was a fixture on that defensive line for half a decade and racked up over 30 sacks. He was supposed to be a cornerstone, a foundational piece for years to come. And here's where the rubber meets the road. This is the financial reality, laid out right in front of us. The Raiders offered a 3-year deal for $48 million, with a very hefty $32 million of that guaranteed. That breaks down to $16 million a year, and that price point, that specific number, was apparently just too rich for the Colts' blood, forcing them to watch their former first-round pick walk right out the door. Okay, that brings us to Section 2, analyzing the aftermath. So here's the million-dollar question, or I guess the $48 million question. Did the Colts make the right call letting him go? To really answer that, we have to look at what Paye was actually doing on the field, because believe me, the truth is way more complicated than you might think. Man, this chart right here tells such a compelling story. Just look at it. In 2023 and 2024, Paye was on fire. He was showing amazing growth, putting up over 8 sacks each year. He looked like he was becoming the star the Colts always hoped he'd be. But then, look at 2025. A massive drop-off to just 4 sacks. That sudden, sharp decline is an absolutely critical piece of this puzzle when you're trying to figure out the Colts' decision. And this right here, this is where the decision gets really, really tricky. Because Kwity Paye was basically 2 different players. As a run defender, he was an absolute beast. Top tier, ranking 16th among all edge defenders in the league. He was a brick wall. But when it came to rushing the passer, it was a totally different story. His pass rush win rate, and that's a stat that measures how often a defender actually beats his blocker in under 2.5 seconds, was dead last. Literally the worst in the league. So you had a guy who was elite against the run, but almost a complete non-factor when it came to consistently pressuring the quarterback. Okay, so that brings us to Section 3, the search for a replacement. With Paye gone, there's a huge hole to fill on that defense. The obvious question is, can the Colts actually go out and find an upgrade on the open market? And almost immediately, one name started popping up everywhere as a prime target: the veteran edge rusher Trey Hendrickson. This guy is a certified pass-rushing monster, and he just so happened to become a free agent after his contract with the Cincinnati Bengals ran out. Now, the logic behind this connection, you guys, it's undeniable. It makes so much sense. The Colts defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo, and their D-line coach, Marion Hobby, both coached Hendrickson when they were in Cincinnati. The familiarity is already there. Just imagine, for a second, pairing a proven sack artist like Hendrickson with their incredible young star, Laiatu Latu. That is the kind of explosive 1-2 punch off the edge that this Colts defense has been desperately, desperately missing. Of course, it always comes down to this question, doesn't it? It's the story of the NFL. The fit on paper is absolutely perfect. But can Indianapolis actually afford a player of this caliber? Can they make the numbers work? And yup, here comes the sticker shock. The projections for Hendrickson are pretty eye-watering. A one-year deal is expected to cost around $21 million. A two-year deal could easily push past $50 million. This is top of the market, premium money for a premium position. We're talking significantly more per year than what Kwity Paye got from the Raiders. Now let's compare that price tag to what the Colts actually have in their wallet. They've got just under $24 million in effective cap space. And you might be asking, what does effective cap space even mean? Well, think of it like your take-home pay, not your gross salary. It's the money a team has left after they've already set aside funds for their upcoming draft class and for an emergency fund for in-season injuries. So could they theoretically afford a one-year deal for Hendrickson? Yes, but it would eat up nearly every single last dollar they have, leaving them absolutely no flexibility for any other moves. It would be a massive all-in gamble. And this, right here, brings us to Section 4. This is where we start to connect the dots. Because letting a homegrown talent walk out the door only to turn around and think about spending even more on his replacement, that's not just a simple roster move. That starts to raise some really fundamental questions about the team's entire philosophy and its direction. One source described the Colts franchise right now as being stuck in a wandering identity crisis. And that phrase just hits you. It suggests this isn't a team with a clear, defined plan anymore. It's a team that's just reacting, moving from one thing to the next without a coherent strategy. And that kind of uncertainty is becoming a major, major red flag for people watching this team. You want a case in point? You want the perfect example of what we're talking about? Look no further than the decision to bring in quarterback Daniel Jones on a major contract. Of all the moves this front office has made recently, this is the one that has left analysts, fans, and pretty much everyone else the most confused. I mean, just think back to 2020. The Colts signed a 39-year-old Phillip Rivers. It was a smart, pragmatic, win-now move that actually worked. It paid off, and they made the playoffs. Now, contrast that with the recent signing of Daniel Jones, a quarterback who has been plagued by inconsistency and injuries for his entire career. The strategies feel like they're from two different planets, and it signals a potential and very scary decay in the front office's decision-making. So when you see puzzling decisions like that, it naturally makes you ask, where is this all coming from? Who's making these calls? In Section 5, we have to examine a potential crisis of leadership, and that means turning our focus to the front office and all the way up to team ownership. Here is a brutal but very telling quote from one critic. It starts to look like cosplay. Now, the context for this is the team's ownership, which has famously been very visible on the sidelines, often wearing a headset. When the team is winning, that looks like passionate involvement. Everyone loves it. But when the team is struggling, the critique starts to emerge that it looks less like real leadership and a lot more like a performance. This idea of a ship that's just adrift at sea really captures the problem here. This leadership group inherited a really solid foundation and a ton of financial flexibility. But instead of building on it, the team completely collapsed down the stretch last season. They seem to be making these little moves that are meant for a true contender, but their record says they are anything but. The growing fear is that this isn't a rebuild anymore. It's just a slow, painful drift into permanent mediocrity. And that brings us to our final section, the crossroads for the Colts. Because this isn't just about winning and losing football games anymore. It's about something far more dangerous for an NFL franchise. It's about losing the battle for relevance in your own city. You have to understand, in Indiana, the sports hierarchy has always been pretty clear. Basketball's king, the Indy 500 is this huge cultural event. For years, the Colts successfully carved out a strong number 2 spot in the hearts of the fans. But recently, a really concerning trend has started to emerge. In a state that is obsessed with basketball, reports are indicating that the Indiana college football team has started generating more local buzz than the city's own professional franchise. That is a huge, huge problem. And that leaves us with this final, chilling question. The team had cap space, they had a decent roster, they had a clear path forward, but instead, they seem to be caught in the NFL's no man's land. They aren't good enough to be contenders, but they're not bad enough to be fully rebuilding. They're just there. And in a passionate sports town like Indianapolis, becoming irrelevant might be the worst fate of all. So what do you think is next for the Colts? I really want to know. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to NFL Nexus for more deep dives just like this one. And hey, to help support the channel, you can check out our brand new coloring books. They're actually really cool and perfect for kids, grandkids, or even for yourself. You can find them by using the link in the description or by scanning the QR code right there on your screen. Thanks for watching.